Good morning, evening, and afternoon, and welcome to the SpunkGo webinar. Today's speaker is Paul Klein. Paul is the founder and CEO of Impact Foundation for Social Change and the author of Change for Good. It is my greatest pleasure to welcome Paul to talk about change for the better. Just a side note, Q&A will be done through the chat feature after his presentation below, where you can leave questions. SpunkGo is an all-girls global student organization where proceeds go to charity. And with that, the floor is now yours, Paul.
Well, thank you, Netra. It's just such a pleasure to have connected with you over the last many months. And I'm a huge fan of your organization and the work that everyone here does. It's so important. And as much as I'm really looking forward to sharing some of my thoughts in this area, I also really look forward to what everyone else here has to say, because you all know about things that I don't. And I can 100% know that I could learn as much from you all as I could share with you. So it's just a great connection to make here. And so one of the things that just, before I have some slides I'm going to share, I would just really encourage everyone to, if you have questions or ideas or something to share, don't wait to the end. Just feel free to put it in the chat, and whoever can see it, and I'll be happy to share anything that answer any questions you have along the way. And I wish I could see everybody. I wish I could be there. We wish we were together, but it's still great anyway. And I'm here, by the way, in downtown in Canada, so we're all in very different places. But I think one of the most important things here is that no matter where we are, social change is more important than ever. Reaching the Sustainable Development Goals is farther away than ever in many cases, unfortunately. And it makes the work that you are all doing more important than ever. And it doesn't matter where anybody is, we still all have to do this, and also look for opportunities to partner and work together. So I'll just start to share my screen though. Can everyone see that? Netra, is that? I'll just go to.
We can see it.
Wait. Let's see. Slideshow. How's that? Good?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay. And can everyone hear me? Am I clear and everything? Netra, is that all right? Okay.
Yeah, everything's good.
Cool. Just building on what Netra said, our work is in a few different spaces here. We're based, as I said, in Toronto. We do work globally in a few different areas. We have two related organizations. One is called Impact, and Impact is a B Corp. And Impact is essentially an advisory service company. We help corporations we develop social change programs for large corporations, and have worked with organizations like McCain Foods and John Deere and Pfizer and Starbucks and others, and have had the really good fortune of being able to collaborate with some global brands, and also extent work with charitable organizations as well. And Netra, as you mentioned earlier, we also started 3 years ago. We started something called the Impact Foundation for Social Change, which is a charitable organization with the mission of creating employment opportunities for newcomers and refugees to Canada. And I'm happy to share more about that. And the website for Impact, if anyone's interested, is Impact, it's with a K, corp.com, and then the foundation is impactfoundation.ca. And you can find out lots more there. Anyway, one of the things that I'm going to talk about today is this book I wrote called Change for Good, which is this is what it looks like, and our work in this space and helping to change for good is really all about helping corporations shift, businesses shift from doing things that are sort of like checkbox activities, doing things because they think they have to do them, to actually developing social change programs that are meaningful and contribute to solving SDGs and some of the most important problems that we all have in the world today. So, but I just wanted to start with this one little story here. And this on the screen is on the right side, left side rather, is someone named Cameron. And you're probably wondering, why is this here? Who, why are we looking at this? But this, he was someone that was particularly important to me and helping really transform the work that we do in this area, to really emphasize people with lived experience of social problems and really involving them in developing social change programs for corporations. And Cameron was someone who we were developing a program around homelessness here in Canada, and with one of the largest retailers in Canada. And one of the things that we were developing this whole program, and part of it was around connecting youth who've experienced homelessness to employment in businesses. And we were starting to do this program, develop this program, and I realized that we didn't really know anything about this. It seemed very important. We're working with this large company, trying to connect youth who've had experienced homelessness with jobs, and it just didn't feel right because we didn't know enough about it. And so I got in touch with an organization that works with homeless youth here in Toronto, and I told them about this, and they started sending people for us to speak to help with this program. And I was meeting with these people, and there's one question I always ask people before they work with us, and I said, and which is, if I asked you to do something, if you were asked to do something, what is the one thing that you could do better than anything else you'd absolutely be able to do it great, no hesitation, this is something you can handle. So, and very often people will say things like PowerPoint or, Excel or something. Anyway, this great guy Cameron said chess. That was the thing that I would have least expected to hear. Anyway, I knew that after he said that, I thought this person's got to be incredible. And we ended up hiring him. He was at the time, literally was homeless at the time, was working with our team. And the success of this particular program, which ended up being called Higher Up, I would say was directly related to his involvement. And it was just an amazing experience. And then as a result of him working with us, he was able to get an apartment eventually, and eventually went back to school. So it was just an incredible experience. And most importantly, it just really, working with him, honestly, really helped transform how I was looking at the work we were doing, and realized that one of the reasons why many of the things that we were doing and that the corporations we were working with were doing weren't working well enough was because we didn't have the perspective from people at Cameron. So I just wanted to share that with you. So just a little bit of the context. And again, this is a context from Canada. It may be different from where you are. I'd love to hear about your perspectives as well, of course. But from where we are sitting, there has been, of course, an enormous surge in the interests of ESG, environment, social, and governance performance in the corporate sector. But, and this is a quote from the current issue of Harvard Business Review, very few companies are actually making meaningful progress on delivering their ESG commitments. So there's a problem and an opportunity. So the S, the social in ESG, has been, identified as a priority, but as what we have seen, it's been a real challenge for corporations to actually improve this area, and that's for a lot of different reasons. One, it's often very much more difficult to measure, and the other part of it is that, as I was saying before, I really believe it's because the people about social change, people like Cameron and others, people with lived experience are actually not included in the development of programs that are intended to help them. So there's just a kind of big framing of how I look at this world, and where I think that the everyone who's involved, and all of you, have the biggest opportunity is to say, okay, well, we shouldn't be working in this area unless we have or involving people directly with lived experience. Otherwise, we're doing things that are not going to work very well. Before I go on, though, does anyone have any questions or observations or anything about this particular point? If you do, put it in the chat. Or I'll keep going. So I'm going to also share with you some things that, like I said, I think it's a very interesting time. I feel like in this space of business and social change, it's a friend of mine said this recently, it's sort of the best of times and worst of times. So I thought I would just share some things that I find particularly inspiring, really good examples of what businesses are doing, and also share some things that I don't think are so good, and then talk about what change for good, how to apply change for good. I think we have a question here. What is ESG and how is it measured, and why is it important for companies? I'll just talk about that because I think it's such an important question. ESG stands for environment, social, and governance performance in these areas. So, and it started as a concept that was particularly important in the investment community. So people were looking at corporations to say not just how much profit they're making in terms of assessing their performance. In addition to that, it's the degree to which they're contributing to reducing climate change with respect to the environment, addressing social issues and social change that matters, and then also improving their own governance and decision making overall and with respect to these issues. And so it's become something that is, I don't know, again, I'm not sure from where everyone here is located, but here it's something that is we're talking about every day, and has become super important. And a lot of the, I think, a lot of the, especially in the environment and social aspects of ESG, are directly related to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I hope that's helpful. So it actually is a great sort of segue to some of these things I'm going to show. I'm not sure if people are familiar with this. This happened last month, where the Yves Chouinard, who is the founder of Patagonia, made a decision to give away all of his shares of the company. Basically, he does not, and his family does not own the company. I can't remember how many billions of dollars this was, but they put it into a trust for the purpose of improving the planet. And so it was just an incredible example of leadership from someone who is already a leader, and the company was already a leader in this area. But also, a really important example of just pure authenticity, I would say, where authenticity in the corporate sector, I think, comes when companies or leaders like Chouinard are doing things that don't appear to be in their self-interest. And that's why we actually think, okay, we can believe this person because they're in fact doing something that seems like, it's not about making money. It's actually about the opposite. And so Patagonia has been a great example of that in general, and some of the incredible programs they have and messages they have around for consumers around things like considering whether you really need to buy a new piece of clothing, or creating an aftermarket for their own clothes, which reduces waste and also creates an opportunity for people to buy their products at a lower price. It's just fantastic. Let's see here. This is an example from India, and a good friend of mine runs an organization in India, which is a little bit like Impact. It's called New Socia. And I asked her to share with me some things that she thought were particularly great, in an area that I wasn't familiar with. And she shared this example from the EY Foundation, which is helping women in India be entrepreneurs and micro entrepreneurs. So this foundation is providing opportunities for rural women to get out of poverty and to start their own businesses. And so, I think it's just really, really great. She, again, I'm not familiar with the Indian context. She is, and she shared it with me. I just thought it was great. So this program is helping to support rural households diversifying and supplementing farm incomes. And they're collaborating with an organization to train rural women in nurturing healthy livestock, proper vaccination, medicine, and other agricultural management practices that are actually improving agriculture and creating incomes for these women. Tom's Shoes, I don't know if people are familiar with Tom's Shoes, but a fantastic organization that, again, I think that's really important here. What at the highest level, this is a company that is in business to improve lives. So I think that's, very often, at least I look at, what a founder or what the mission of an organization is. And again, I think this is something which is really remarkable. When you say you're in business to improve lives, kind of elevates everything you do. One of the interesting things about this company is their kind of social work started around a buy one, give one model. So when you buy a pair of Tom's shoes, they would give a pair to distribute them to people in the developing world. But they've changed that model actually to more of what I would call a trust-based philanthropy model, where they're saying, no, we're not going to do that anymore because that actually isn't solving problems. What they're doing is investing a third of their profits in terms of cash and other capacity building directly to organizations that are contributing to social change, and in developing countries, and also in the West as well. One of the things they're focusing on is mental health and other health-related issues. So that's super, super important. Now, in the chat, there's a couple things here. Which SDG do you think is most important? Well, the first SDG is eliminating poverty. And I would say that's probably so much of the issues around the need for social change is directly related to that. So that would be my first reaction. Another question is anything in Bangladesh? I have a humanitarian foundation. You know what? I'm not familiar with what's going on in Bangladesh, so I can't answer the question. I would love to know more about it. I'm sure there are great things that are happening there. But I could find out from our colleague at New Socia. And then another question here is, how can we as a student work with you to contribute to society? Well, that's a good question. I'm sure there's a way. We'll come back to that afterwards. First of all, you could get in touch with me, and I'll share my email address afterwards. Let's see. This is, are people familiar with Ben & Jerry's there? Anyone know about Ben & Jerry's? Netro. So Ben & Jerry's, if people who don't know, like Patagonia, was one of the early leaders in a business which was also a values-based business, I would say, that was existing to help solve social problems. And interestingly enough, Ben & Jerry's, in fact, is an ice cream company. It's an enormous brand, but their whole existence was, in addition to making profit, contributing to solving social problems. And the founder of Ben & Jerry's, his name is Ben Cohen, is starting a new social enterprise, which is just launching, called Ben's Best Blends. And this is states so far, but it's actually a weed cannabis business, which is creating ownership opportunities for Black entrepreneurs to have retail businesses start selling cannabis. And one of the reasons why that's so important, as cannabis is legal in many states in the United States, is because of the opportunity to fight the war on drugs in the United States, which inappropriately and unproportionately targets Black people. So here's an opportunity. Cannabis is legal, great opportunities for Black entrepreneurs to be in the cannabis business and to fight the kind of national war against drugs, which is targeting these same people. I'll just type my email here. Okay, on the other side of this, so I've showed some examples that I think are really amazing. Of course, there's so much, sadly, that is not so amazing, and what I would call very performative. And one of the things I think is so interesting is when you ask people, at least here, who is doing amazing work in this area, like what businesses are really contributing to social change, people will very often say exactly the same companies. Some of the ones I showed, Patagonia is always on the top of people's lists, or Ben & Jerry's and others. And after that, it's very interesting because people don't have too much to say. And the reality is that they're either, the majority of companies and brands are not either doing things that nobody cares about, or actually doing things that aren't very good. And so I always think it's interesting to look at those examples too, because you can learn so much of what not to do. This is an example, this is from earlier this year during Pride Month, which I think is in June, where Pride Month is now a global, create awareness of LGBTQ issues. This is from, one of the world's biggest fast food chains, Burger King, who decided that a good message to come out during the time of Pride Month was this, which is the Pride, what they call the Pride Whopper. Their hamburger is called the Whopper. They've got the Pride Whopper, and so their insight was they'll show this with, instead of two different buns on the top and the bottom, the same buns. And this is something that lasted in the world for a very short period of time because it was seen to be and is offensive to the LGBTQ community. And a good example of a company that just shared this kind of inappropriate message without having any real program behind this to say they're actually doing something. So an important thing that I always a question I always ask is this a promotion or is there a program here? And so very often, too many promotions, not enough programs. This is another thing which I honestly is so strange, it's hard to even put words to this. This is from it's an enormous manufacturer of guns and weapons in the United States. And which, of course, there are people, particularly in the United States, who support access to weapons. I do not. Smith & Wesson, as a manufacturer of guns, also has a commitment to ESG, environment, social, and governance. So how a gun manufacturer, my point of view, is how a gun manufacturer can stand up for social health and safety issues is something that I personally find very difficult to process. But it does show a very interesting example to me because it does show how common this whole area has become. And for some people, they are possibly influenced, to maybe buy these products or who knows what, because this is a company that it also in a strange way is claiming to be responsible, even though it's irresponsible at the same time. I'm just going to check out the chat here. There's so many things. I'll look at all these afterwards, but I appreciate everyone's input. Just before I continue, Netra, is this helpful so far from your point of view?
Yeah, I think this is very helpful. Yeah, dissecting which ones are very good at promoting ESG and really working towards a goal or a program, and who aren't doing such a good job. Yeah.
So I think that's the point. And also the opportunity here is because, and again, I don't know enough in any way about where everyone is from here, but probably it's the same, where there's a small number of companies that are doing great work, a small number of companies like this one who are doing things that are actually not right at all, and lots in the middle where people could actually help to shift from doing just not very meaningful to actually contributing to solving problems that are important in wherever you are. And I think that's who I always look at, those companies in the middle, because we can't change people like this probably, but we can change lots of others. So now we have how to make change for good, which is really, these are some of the ideas that I shared in this book, Change for Good, and some of the reasons why I wrote this book, as these are the things that I had in mind, which were, number one, the importance of shifting from performative, what I called corporate social responsibility light, to actually solving social problems. And again, there's just like the Burger King example there of the Pride Whopper, we're surrounded by this kind of thing. And the actual number of organizations that are genuinely committed to solving social problems, have programs that are not promotions, but they actually have programs, is not nearly enough. Number two is, again, these sounds like they're such basic things, but they're so important. Actually taking the time to find out what matters to people inside companies, consumers, stakeholders in the community, and so on. And the most basic questions are not asked nearly enough, which is what matters to you? What are the issues that you're concerned about? What is affecting your family? Is it poverty? Is it lack of education? Is it environmental issues, or whatever it is? And so, that's the most important way to look at this stuff. And of course, coming back to what I was saying before, really committing to involving people with lived experience. And once the problems are identified, then it's like, well, companies are not experts at this. They're experts at making money or, producing whatever products or services they have. And I always use the example of companies, because I've seen this myself. Like if a company has a problem, I don't know, like an IT problem, what do? They will find the person who knows most about that problem, because it needs to be solved. And that's an important thing to them. At the same time, the same company, if they have decided that, in the communities that near their company, that, I don't know, helping improve education is important, they will often decide how to do that themselves, even though they've actually never experienced not having an education or what that actually means. So this is just a kind of, sort of a wake-up call to say, what, you actually have to look at this as important as anything else. So you have to look at it in the same way, involve people with lived experience. Now, I'm just going to look at some of the things in the chat here. The last one here is, I have an organization that works on SDG 4, quality of education, but I'm not able to make a big impact yet. do you have any tips how to reach more people and influence them to help others as well? Well, it's a big question, and it's to answer that in a responsible way, I would really have to hear more about the exact situation where you are. But I could also share so many examples of other organizations that are doing this. One of the things, of course, is involving some of the people who need education and helping to develop solutions there. I actually just had a here in Toronto, got together yesterday with an amazing woman who's head of an organization in Canada, all across Canada, called Let's Talk Science. And her program is incredible, a lot to learn from that. She's been able to embed science learning in schools across Canada to improve and increase the number of people who are fluent in science. So this is just one thing. Let's Talk Science. It's just maybe something to look at. Here I'm going to show you something which is which we call the Impact Change for Good model. And it's something that perhaps will be helpful to people who are working, especially with businesses in any way. And honestly, we start every single project with sharing this model with people who are involved in the project, in the business that we're working with. And I'll just explain it, how it works to you. And so one of the things to know, and you can, if you're communicating with businesses and related to programs that you have, to ask them is, number one, is why are you doing this? Why is this important to you? Are you interested in, some kind of, sort of altruistic, philanthropic, gift to the community? Or are you interested in, you're somehow doing this in a way that is directly related to your business priorities, or is it somewhere in the middle? Another question is how they're doing this. And on the one hand, are they doing it on the left side here? It says community investment. So this is sort of more transactional, giving grants, volunteering, all that stuff, which is not a bad thing, but it doesn't necessarily contribute to lead to what's on the other side of that axis, social change, which is solving social problems. So as a company interested in kind of doing something nice, was actually committed to something that's transformational in terms of solving problems. And on the vertical axis here is, and such an important question to ask, are people like inside a company and customers and so on, do they know about this? Are they aware of it? Are they involved in some way? And, after I just, tell you that after sharing this with so many different organizations over such a long time, that mostly what we find is, and literally where you have this, we have a meeting with people and ask you, where would you place yourselves on this? To different companies. And very often it's, low engagement. People within the companies don't know, aren't involved. It's their approach is really more of community investment. And the reasons they do it are often more kind of philanthropic today. And then we say, well, what would be optimal? And mostly the answers are also the same, which is they would want to be more solving social problems and contributing to social change. And they would want to do that in a way where it's actually addressing their business priorities at the same time. And they would want people to know about it and to be involved. So using this simple model for us is a great way of helping people we work with understand, this is where we are today, but we would really like to be over here. So then how do we get there? So anyway, before I go on, does anyone have any questions about this? Or could you see it being useful in your own work?
I think there are a few general questions. I don't think there's anything pertaining to this, but there is
Okay.
a question here.
Yep.
I want to be an agent of change, but people don't listen to me. Any advice?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, I think that number one, sometimes it takes a long time, like in the work that I do, when I started, nobody was listening to me either. But I think that one of the things that, and again, I don't know about this situation that you're in, I can only speak for my own experience, is that one of the things that I realized that was important for me is a few things. One, I started writing very early on. I started trying to express myself in different ways, and sharing what I thought. In this case, for me, it was about, I don't know, writing articles in magazines and so on. For you, it could be social media or other things. Another thing which for me was always very important is finding partners or friends or allies who are in the same space, So you're not alone in this work. There are all kinds of other people who are involved in spending time with them, collaborating with them, and so on. And this is one of the things that I did and still do all the time. I find it so helpful. And then the other thing I would say is that being directly involved in programs, and whatever that is, And so doing all those things, like there's no guarantee that people are going to pay attention, but at least you'll know that you're trying to communicate, you're involved with people who are in the same space, and you're directly involved in some programs that you're passionate about. And so, again, there's no perfect answer, but that's where I would start. Anyone else? Any other questions?
I don't know if these are questions, but there's definitely a lot of people who are trying to build organizations to combat global issues. And so there's a question here. Any advice or tips to help companies for change and making good impact on them as individuals?
Well, I think it's the same things we're talking about here, I think if it's helping companies to make change, it's number one, helping them, encouraging them to listen to the people who are most important to them. Ask them what's important, find out what matters to their employees. Listen to the priorities in their communities, and work backwards from that. And then I think that's, I always find, at least, that when you do that, it makes everybody feel good, like on an individual basis. Like that's most important. And again, this is not, you would think this would be something that is so obvious to do that, what I just said, listen, because companies are very good at doing many things. They're not necessarily good at the stuff we're talking about here. They just don't know enough about it. I just wanted to share one thing with you here. This is a company which is, I don't know if they're in Asia or not, but they're certainly all over North America and other countries, perhaps in Central America as well. I don't know. This is a big retail company. It's called Home Depot. It's like an enormous hardware store. And we help them develop this singular focus on helping to end youth homelessness. And one of the things that I think is really important here, again, you look back at that chart I was sharing with you before, is the focus is on solving this problem, not just donating to support others that are, there's a lot of help that's needed, obviously, but there's an organization that's committed to actually solving the problem, and I absolutely love that. And they're also, in our developing this particular initiative, we were involving people who lived experience of homelessness all the way along. So I think it's just a very inspiring example to me. Oops. This is another one recently in the last couple of years that we developed here in Canada. Petro-Canada is, I think, the largest oil and gas company in Canada. part of another bigger company. And we through a process of honestly the most basic stuff, which was listening to their employees, trying to understand the issues that really matter with them, and looking kind of broadly in this country at issues that are really important but are currently not being addressed very well. We all came to this place of understanding that caregiving, which is how, not from doctors or other medical professionals, but family caregiving, people helping others and not being paid for that, is such an important issue. So now this organization exists. Petro-Canada, this big oil and gas company, set up their own foundation called the Caremakers Foundation, which exists for this exclusive purpose. So then you have this, wow, this is an oil and gas company setting up a foundation to address the needs of caregivers. And it's just, it's just becoming incredibly important in this country. So here's a question here. In terms of social media, how can we utilize it to spread important information and advocate for social issues? Well, actually, it's very timely, and I should have shared this. This organization, Petro-Canada Caremakers Foundation, has just come out with a social media campaign about this issue of caregiving, which I could, at very least, I'll send it to Netra. I could share it with you, or anyone could look it up, because it's just a fantastic example of exactly what you're saying here. And I would say just the other important thing when you're doing social media around social issues is, again, we want it to be the most impact is when it comes from or shares the perspective of people who are actually in the issue rather than just a company or someone else. It's always so important. That's what I look for. And also is creating awareness of programs or things that are really, really successful in addressing this issue. That's a whole other conversation. It's so important. Lots of people in terms of communication focused only on the negative aspects, which are, of course, many with respect to social issues, and without actually focusing on solutions. And I think that it's the solutions part of it, which is so important. Here is another question here. I have a passion to help young people who are struggling in life and don't have any access to go back to school, and they're living in poverty. What tips can help me reach my goal? Because I just have an idea but don't have anything. Again, I come back to that. Have you spoken to people there? Have you spoken to businesses there? Of course, poverty is not the only thing, and it's such a complex problem. Obviously, I don't want to oversimplify it, but what are opportunities for employment? What are opportunities for education? Education very often is leading to employment. How could you partner with, perhaps the government, perhaps a business, perhaps another social service organization who has a kind of pathway, and create a kind of pathway that has all these different elements to it? And how could you get all the people together, not all of them, but get people who are experiencing this issue from different points of view, like schools, like businesses, people in poverty themselves, and so on, to come together in some way to help understand the problem and co-create a solution that involves everybody, because it's such a complex issue. Again, I really am cautious about oversimplifying something which is so important, but it starts with listening, obviously. Here's another, just an example of something that we're fortunate to be involved with. This is McCain Foods, which I believe is the biggest grower of potatoes in the world and all over the world. And what they have done is made a commitment to what they call farms of the future, which are going to be I think there are going to be 7 of them around the world. The first one was here in Canada. The second one, I believe, is in Central Africa. Maybe it's Nigeria. I can't remember where. Anyway, they're sort of the sort of farm labs, and they're actually saying, okay, we're going to have these farms in the future to develop new approaches to regenerative agriculture, and it's going to help them in their potato business, but also the same principles can help anyone and everyone who's interested in improving the sustainability of agriculture, no matter where they are or what industry they're in. So they're committed to doing this, sharing what they know, and really creating a new future for agriculture at an enormous scale. So I think there's just an incredible program. So that's the end of the kind of the slides that I have. This is the book that I was talking about that I wrote. I'd just love to maybe just open this up now to more questions and conversations, and to hear more from you all about things you're doing, things that are working, and maybe things that you need to improve.
So I think we have a question over here. Opinions on vertical farming. Is it really much better for the environment than regular farming?
You know what? I don't know as much. I don't know enough about it to answer the question. I think it's one of those things that probably depends, because regular farming, probably with things like I was just talking about, can be improved immensely. There's also great opportunities for vertical farming, especially in urban contexts. So there's right near where I live in Toronto, there's an organization that has a vertical farm, and I think it's fantastic. So I think both are probably important.
I'm sure a lot of the audience are people trying to start up their own organizations, and a lot of people are asking for advice. So how are we doing this? How do we start an organization? And I know a lot of people are also going to use that advocacy towards social change. And so the main question here is, how do we build an organization?
It's a great question. Having built, I guess, 3 different organizations, not always, one of them didn't work out that well, actually. So that was important learning, actually, and what didn't work. I don't know. I just feel like it always seems to me, for me, in my experience, starting with a group of people who are really passionate about this, about a particular issue, understanding what structure of an organization is going to be. And again, I'm not familiar with where everybody is, how it all works, but here, there are more options than there used to be. So you can have are you going to operate your organization as a not-for-profit organization? Here there's 2 different types of not-for-profit organizations. One is a business that doesn't make a profit, and the other is a charitable organization, which is registered and can receive donations from people. And so that's another question. Do you want to be a B Corp ultimately? Impact is a B Corp, hugely important movement around the world. I hope people are familiar with B Corps. If you're not, look up B Corps. It's really important. This also gives, if you're interested in social change, in a social change business, operating as a B Corp gives you a particular kind of credibility, I would say, and connection to other B Corps around the world. So that's a good option. And they're also just businesses. There are businesses that are social change businesses, like that one I was sharing, that Ben's Best Blends. So it's a business. It's a company that is in the business of social change. So I would look at all those things.
In your opinion, what kind of business will grow in the future to support eco-friendly, sustainable architecture?
Well, again, I don't know enough about architecture, but I think all this stuff is just inevitable, actually, because whether it's in this particular field, like sustainability and climate change is so important, and it's just happening everywhere. So one of the things that is driving this is, it's when people who are the folks who are, commissioning buildings and developing new building projects. And one of our clients here is I think the biggest developer in Canada, and they're probably among the biggest developers in the world. It's when companies like that have made a decision that every new building has got to be sustainable. So that drives the architecture of this stuff and drives people who are in the business of architecture to be doing things in a different way. And there's incredibly important things happening in that field, and part of it is because of what I said, and the other part is, again, this, as regulations change in different parts of the world about what is required in terms of building, in terms of building materials, in terms of sourcing of building materials, in terms of, you know, the sustainable design of buildings, it's all going to change. Just like, you know, what's changing is, again, I don't know where you all are from, but here plastic bottles are going to be eliminated. You know, you're not going to be able to buy a drink that's in a plastic bottle. And the same thing with automobiles. So cars, you're not going to be able to buy, I don't remember what the date is, but I think here in Canada, it's maybe 2030 or 2035, you will only be able to buy an electric or hybrid automobile. So
I definitely agree with that. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. The next question we have here is, how do you look at involving the youth at large in issues to do with the environment and also combat climate change in particular?
well, obviously climate change is, you know, central to the environment, you know, so youth, I don't know, like I think that maybe there's such passion among so many youth about this issue that I would think that's like the harder question to ask would be, how would you involve people who are not youth in climate change and the environment, you know? So you've got people like Greta, and you know, as a young person, look what she has done in terms of creating a global message around climate change. It's so powerful. There's so many young people who are involved in this. So like I think that the perhaps the more important question is, given that there's so many youth who want to make a difference in this area with respect to environment and climate change, how do you harness that, you know, wherever you are? Like, I think it should be something that's almost like, at this point, at least to me, a kind of accepted thing. The youth are passionate about this because their future is in jeopardy. So then it's like, well, how do you actually organize this, harness this, focus them? I mean, climate change and the environment, there's so many different aspects of it, you know. So one of the things is, wherever you are, I think, asking you, like, what are the most important aspects of climate change? If there was only one area within the complex world of sustainability and climate change that a group of youth could address in your country, in your city, wherever it is, what's the most important thing? What's the thing that needs to be addressed, you know, fastest? And then creating a youth co-created program that addresses that issue.
Definitely. I think youth is probably one of the most powerful advocates for climate change right now. Yeah.
Yeah, if the youth aren't involved, like, we're pretty well finished. You know, people like me, it's like it hasn't worked well enough, honestly. You know, like our generation has failed. And so, you know, it's really up to, I mean, people like us have to do stuff different too. But it's really the power of change is really in young people today.
I agree with that. Yeah. The next question here is, how can we help from rural areas artisans to better life? I'm not sure if this was phrased in the best way.
No, I get it. I think that's, again, a really big question. One of the things is, artisans in rural areas is one of the biggest problems is access to markets. You know, people who are making things in rural places, they have to be able to sell them. So I would say one of the most important things is, in a important question in a complex area, is there a way of creating a actual access to markets for people in a rural area? So say it's in a particular small rural community, how could you, maybe there's a web platform that could be developed, maybe there's a way of connecting those artisans in a particular space or place to people who are retailers in other areas, like that's the connection. Somehow people have to be able to sell their products. So that would be the question I would ask. How do we connect these artisans with people who could actually buy these products and then sell them? And whether it's directly to people in other places to buy directly through a platform, or whether it's through a channel like a retailer or a retail platform that could sell those products. So that's how I would be thinking about it.
So I'm mindful of time, so this will be the last question, but if you do want to drop your LinkedIn, Paul, and so
Yeah.
if my audience can just send you a quick DM or chat, and you can kind of like continue questions from there. But the last question we have here is, in your opinion, what are the skills you would recommend we should learn to become successful and build innovative solutions?
Well, I think that it's, again, a complex question. One thing is, focus is always good, so it's hard to learn about everything. I would say start with the things that are most important to you in terms of social change or environmental change. And then find out who knows most about those problems or issues and where you are, on a bigger level and so on. Sometimes it's being able to go to school with respect to those particular things and learn more in a formal way. And sometimes it's creating, there's the great thing now is there's so many ways of learning about things and connecting with people who are also focused on those same issues. That's one thing I would do first, who's already doing it? What are they doing? Could I be involved in this? Could I be a volunteer? How could I contribute? Like understanding that landscape. And there's no, like the other thing is, related to all this stuff is something I always say, which is just don't hold back, like engage and reach out to people. And, and usually if you're really passionate about something, that shows people will want to talk to you, so, and people love to share what they're doing. So that's what I would do.
Thank you so much, Paul, for this absolutely amazing presentation. It was super insightful into change for good and how companies should be doing this.
And it's my pleasure. I'll just do a couple things here. I'll just put my LinkedIn here.
Of course. Yeah.
And then it's my, Twitter and Instagram is the same.
Mm-hmm.
All at Impact. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Petra, it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to the audience as well for the interactions and these lovely questions. So if you need any more details, visit our website, www.spunko.com, and definitely get in contact with Paul because he will be waiting for it. Thank you, everybody, and have a good day ahead.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.